on Russia, especially that country's president, Vladimir Putin. President Trump not denying that Putin may be a killer, and then he added something cryptic, saying that there are a lot of killers. Listen to this.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country. I say it's better to get along with Russia than not. Will I get along with him? I have no idea. It's very
He's a
possible
killer,
I
though.
won't.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Well, you think our country's so innocent?
We have a panel to discuss these remarkable comments from the president. Political analyst Selena Zito, New York Times contributor Wajahat Ali, and our former Moscow bureau chief, Jill Doherty. Jill, to you first. President Trump has often said that he respects Vladimir Putin, but I want to hear your reaction to that line about killers, saying that our country is asking if our country is so innocent. That's unlike anything we've ever heard from an American president before.
Yes, in fact, Boris, from a president, and I think that's the important point here, that, he has said this before, but he wasn't the president. He said it back in December of 2015 to MSNBC when he was a candidate. He said our country does a lot of killing, or plenty of killing too. But now he is the president of the United States. And to hear this coming out of his mouth, to many people, is extremely shocking. I mean, I think you just have to ask yourself, does he believe this? Or is he kind of on autopilot saying the things that he has said before as a candidate? Because, when he said, I respect him, we're going to get along, I don't know if we're going to get along, but if Russia helps fight terrorism, that's a good thing. He said all of that, too. So does he really believe that the United States is equivalent to what Vladimir Putin is doing? And if he does believe it, then what are the examples? I mean, I think that is a legitimate question that now should be asked of the president. What killing does he have in mind? Is it equal to, let's say, what is going on with Russia's actions in Aleppo, or what Russia did in Grozny and Chechnya? Or, again, is he just recycling a whole lot of old campaign comments, not realizing the effect of his words as president of the United States?
Selena, the timing of this is also really curious, considering just a few days ago, the ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, bashed Russia in front of the United Nations. Also, you have several Republican lawmakers that have come out saying that we need to enforce stronger sanctions against Russia. Among them, Senator John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio. How do they handle this kind of cozying up to Vladimir Putin moving forward?
Well, the president employs what I personally call the Law and Order throwaway line. Law and Order is a show that ran forever, is still running on NBC. And in the beginning of every segment, there was always a sort of inappropriate throwaway line that marked the show. And he tends to do that when he speaks. It's part of his cadence. It's part of his personality. Many people had thought that he would stop that as president, but I don't think he's going to. There's a couple of things going on. I think maybe it's more part of his style than him thinking, sort of long game about, what he is saying as president. As you said, Nikki Haley came out strong this week at the United Nations. He also had a conversation today with the president of the Ukraine. And they talked about the problems with Russia, and he talked about, this was in the readout from the White House, and he also talked about having negotiations with Russia about the situation in Ukraine. So I think it's more a throwaway line than anything else.
We have one more guest to add to our panel. Senior political analyst David Gergen is joining us over the phone. David, you've worked for several administrations, for presidents. What do you make of this? Is there something that we're not getting about these comments that Donald Trump gets when he says that America, or implies that America is not so innocent?
Well, let me acknowledge up front that I haven't seen the full transcript. I've seen snippets of it, but I think it's enough the snippets are enough to really be upsetting in one sense. American presidents, the American government for years has had a very clear understanding that there is no moral equivalence between the kind of authoritarian dictatorship that's emerging in Russia, that has emerged under Vladimir Putin, with the kind of leadership that we expect in America and the standards we hold people to. And it may well be a throwaway line. That you can call it a throwaway line, but you know what? Presidents are not permitted throwaway lines that get us into, that are very confusing, suggest things that we don't want to think are true. And the job of the president is to be careful, be deliberative, to say what needs to be saying, but to leave it there. And these throwaway lines are continually getting him into a lot of trouble. I would point out that what's been happening, even in the last 24 hours, is that his team around him is increasingly saying things that are more mainstream, but he then has these, quote, throwaway lines, and he has his Twitter storms that say just the opposite, that are on the extremes, that attack the judge today, that attack again the New York Times, and that sort of thing. And they really undercut it's not just the credibility of the United States, but they throw into question the quality of our leadership. And it confuses the world, and it confuses Americans, and it leads one to suspect that maybe he does think that we're somehow that Putin is on the same plane as American leadership. If so, we really need to know that.
Wajahat, to you, to touch on something that David just mentioned about confusion in the world, what do you think the Middle East hears when they hear Donald Trump speak well of Vladimir Putin, especially considering what we've seen unfold in Syria over the past few years?
Let me be very blunt. There's a reason why people are calling him Putin's poodle. And David made a good point. If you look at Donald Trump's Twitter account, he has tweeted against John Lewis, civil rights icon, Republican senators, the CIA, Hamilton the musical, not once against Vladimir Putin. And so I challenge Donald Trump on CNN right now, one tweet criticizing Putin. He won't do it. And also Americans forget that Russia did a criminal hack of our elections, allegedly to tilt it towards Trump. And our intelligence agencies right now are investigating certain connections between allegedly people in Trump's campaign and Russia. That includes National Security Advisor Flynn. Now, Donald Trump supposedly parrots a lot of Putin's talking points. He wants to, essentially, he says NATO is obsolete. Who else thinks that? Putin. He's okay with the EU going away. Who else thinks that? Putin. He wants to reduce the sanctions. Who else wants that? Putin. And so for Americans right now, and this is very serious, why does Donald Trump, who wants to ban innocent refugees and innocent legal visa holders from Muslim-majority countries who are doctors, who work for us, who are students, he wants to ban them, but he's okay with a murderer and a tyrant in Vladimir Putin?
Jill, to you now, you have to think that some of our NATO allies are hearing this, and they have to be concerned about these comments.
Oh, I think concerned is really an understatement. I think many people will probably be appalled by these comments, especially people who live in countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union. It's very hard to wrap your head about this. So, again, why is he doing it, and what is the effect? You have, at this point, a completely convoluted approach to Russia and as they call it, the former Soviet space, the countries that are in that area. Even Ukraine. The first day, his spokesperson from the State Department came out and didn't even mention, I believe it was Crimea. It was a very soft comment about Russia and Ukraine. Then Nikki Haley comes out very hard. And then I was just checking the statement from the White House about the conversation between President Trump and President Poroshenko of Ukraine. No mention of Crimea. So what does this administration really think about Russia? Is there actually a policy? And this is a disturbing thing to think, that no policy has yet been worked out, no coherent policy. Does he have a National Security Council that is studying this and coming up with one idea, one approach, or is it all just throwing it up in the air and seeing what sticks? I think this comment, especially about the killing, is really basically pandering by the president. You know, sometimes when you're a business person and you're in negotiations and you kind of want to pander to the other person, get them on your side, you say something, well, we all do this. You know, yeah, that's the world. We all do this. And that's can be an effective technique when you're a businessman. But when you are the head of the United States, that is extraordinarily dangerous.
Yeah, I'm not sure many people in our armed forces would necessarily agree that we all do what Russia has been doing, especially the last few years in Syria. Jill, David, Selena, and Wajahat, we appreciate the time on this Saturday night. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspectives.